Hello and welcome to the Replimat, a regular chatcast in which two nerds go through Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode by episode. The two nerds in question are over there in darkest Exeter. We have
Tim, me, hello.
and over here up in the mountains of not very sunny Wales, we have me, Andy. Hello. So today's episode is episode 12 of season 2, The Alternate, the story by Jim Trombetta and Bill Dial. It's teleplay by Bill Dial, directed by David Carson, and first transmitted on January 10th, 1994, which obviously means they've had their winter break.
Do they have like a mid-season break?
I'm guessing they would have done, yep, same as most American shows. They have their like winter breaks and whatever, don't they? We don't really do that over here because it's been because last time we was with them, they were in, I believe, November.
Yeah, it was end of November. It was I'm sure 30th of November was last week's.
Yes, and now we're on January 10th, so winter break.
Yeah,
which is interesting because imagine Rivals being the mid-season, I say finale, not really, is it? The pre-winter break episode would have made me go, I can't wait to see the next episode in a month and a half.
Yeah, hopefully
they come back with a good one. But anyway, we'll get to that. Before we continue, let me read Netflix's surprisingly good blurb. Dr. Morapol arrives on DS9 with the announcement that he may have clue to Odo's origin. It's right. It actually tells you about the bloody story.
It does.
Which, first time, right? So, that's nice. But anyway, before we get into the actual episode proper, because I suspect Tim's got quite a bit to say about this one, or maybe not a lot, because based on the actions, he seemed to be enjoying it, which means we probably won't have a lot to say. But we'll see. Anyway, Tim, before we do that, dare I ask, how has your week been? I know it's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question, yes, and I've had a full week back at work for the first time. Because last week was I only did 4 days. This week I've had a full 5-day week back at work, so I'm sort of back in the swing of it, and everything's sort of piling on as previously. But I'm getting better at kind of trying to stick to some kind of work-life balance. So. I have been able to do some stuff outside of work, which is very, very rewarding. I haven't watched any more Clone Wars this week because it's been half term here, so I've been in the office if I've been on site, and so I've not had access to watching Clone Wars like I normally do. Having said that, I've finally finished watching all of Robin of Sherwood. So I've finished watching the last few episodes last weekend. So now I've finally, sort of 40 years too late, or 40 years late, I've watched all of Robin of Sherwood, which is interesting, and I'm glad I watched it. It's there were a few times where I kind of drifted away from it for a little bit and then came back. On the whole, when I watched it, I enjoy it, but what I found was it's not something that made me desperate to watch the next episode. And there we go. I've also watched another Cracker. We're almost at the end of Cracker as well, because Cracker was something that was I kind of picked up a while back. We got to a point where there were the two sort of end of the run TV movies left. So there was one that was in 1996, and then there's another one, and that's the one we haven't yet watched, which is made in 2006. So we watched the penultimate Cracker, which was another one by Paul Abbott. So in keeping with Paul Abbott's other sort of recent episodes of Cracker, anyway, it was good, but they lack the kind of gut wrenching punch that Jimmy McGovern's episodes had. So as the originator of the series, I think Jimmy McGovern's episodes were overall a lot better, and they tended to be the ones that they told the story. They kind of told the story through the characters, but they told stories that allowed the characters to develop, and the kind of the background storylines between the characters to develop, which was part of the brilliance of it, really. And what tended to happen, I think, with the Paul Abbott episodes is that Fitz does what Fitz does, and everything kind of gets resolved at the end, but doesn't really move Fitz on as a character, doesn't really move anyone else on as a character, apart from the authors or the writers' own original characters who were in those episodes, who have their kind of arc, really. So that was good to pick up another cracker. And so it's been a bit of a week of kind of picking up on old stuff that I hadn't finished from earlier in the year. Again, I haven't been reading anything, but as in keeping with the last few weeks, I will actually show a recent acquisition, just in case our viewer is interested. This week, I'm going to show you the Memoirs of Emma Courtney by Mary Hayes, which was a recent acquisition, or a recent reacquisition, because I had it years ago and read it and loved it. And some years back, when I had to sell all of my classic literature, that went. So I have a feeling I did that. I think I have did that text when I did my master's degree with the Open University. Okay. That's likely to have been where it came up, because it's written in like 1794, 96, something like that. And it's an early kind of feminist, strong feminist novel. Mary Hayes was a contemporary of and associate of Mary Wollstonecraft. Mm-hmm. The vindication of the rights of women, vindication of the rights of man, and so forth. So it's all from that period, and really, really strong novel. Very, very, very good. Which I'm looking forward to reading again. Now I have a copy of it. So. Nice. There we are. That's my week in an inflated nutshell. I'm going to, while you talk about your week, I'm just going to plunge my coffee, if that's all right.
Okay, you plunge away. I shall talk about my week.
Plunge.
I've been off since Thursday, so I've 5 days off. So it's day 3 of those 5. So I've done work, obviously, busy, cold. Very cold, very, very cold. Outside of work, obviously, I'm still continuing with Sublock H. I am now 196, I think, of 692. So slowly moving forward. Still not even halfway, but I'm edging there very slowly. What else have I been watching? Obviously, Green Grass. So I'm at the end of season 3, my bad. I got just season 4 to go, and yeah, it's quite good. What else have I been doing? Well, last few days I've been watching quite a bit of Netflix and stuff, because I'm like, well, I've got these streaming services. I'm at home. It's a few days off, so days to relax, always good. Mm-hmm. So I've been catching up on a few films and documentaries. What have I watched? I watched stuff like documentary-wise. I watched what's it called? Bugger. It was this film.
Called anything?
It could have been. It was specifically called. I forget what it's called, of course, but it's basically about this town in Australia, a small town of only like 11 people.
It's not a town?
Well, they call it a town. 11 people, and one of them went missing. And it's all about the investigation of trying to work out what happened to him. Pretty sure he died and stuff. And the more they go into it, it's a 2-part thing. The more they go into it, you suddenly realise how much grievances there are amongst this very small community. But as you get a group of people together every day, shit's going to obviously build up. And that was quite interesting. And I'm watching it thinking, because they're like what, the nearest actual town that they can go and trade with and whatnot. It's like 50 odd miles away. It's a fair, out of nowhere. And I'm like, how could you live like that? I mean, I like the idea of being cut off from most of the world. That has a certain appeal to it. But what do you do for money? I mean, tourists pass through because it's such a small town. But still, there's only so much tourist trade you can get from a place that has 11 people in. You'd have thought. So that was
Yes.
fascinating. That was, entertaining and interesting to watch. I also watched the documentary on, I say the Conjuring films. Don't know if you've watched them or if it's your bag. No,
No.
Conjuring. No, they're supposedly based on the cases of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are demonologists and spiritualists and whatever. And the most recent one was called "The Devil Made Me Do It," which is based on a true story from the 70s, I think, late 70s, in, I want to say, Connecticut. It's certainly somewhere in that area of America, where this teenage guy basically murders his girlfriend's boss, I think it is. And the claim in court was the devil made me do it. And they were trying to say he's not guilty because he was possessed. And so it goes to, and so it's a fictional version, but I was watching a documentary of the actual supposed reality of it.
Right.
Was it on Netflix? I think that was on actually Amazon. And that was interesting to see. I'm watching it skeptic. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't try buying this. And the elder brother only got interviewed at the end because he was quite distant from his family, and his version of the events was very, very different.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I have to say, I'm kind of siding with you because that makes more sense to me that these demonologists come along and they're telling you what the demon will do when it possesses you in front of the kids, and suddenly all this stuff starts happening. Skeptic kind of says, well, it seems to me you were like keying up the kid to behave in a particular way. And the elder son says, he was watching these events happening and his brother supposedly possessed and all this kind of crap. And then suddenly the dad comes in and just, enough of that, slap, go and sit over there. And it just ends just like that. And you're like, yeah, it sounds to me like it was all being played up because of the suggestion. And then they later find out that for months and years, the mother had been putting in their supper this American thing, which basically helps you. It's a sleeping thing that helps you sleep and rest, and she'd been putting it in their food for years and years. So by the end of the day, everyone's all cool and calm and just sleepy, so she can have a nice, peaceful evening. And apparently, this had been going on for years because she had written it in her diary, and he found the diary. So that's kind of proves it. And of course, long-term effects of this stuff, it can be, you could get hallucinations and you're quite suggestive and blah, 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 blah. And the more I watch, the more I'm thinking, yeah, this sounds more believable than demonic possession.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing to entertain myself.
Fab. Well, here we are on a Saturday, and are you going to tell the viewer and or listener what day it is today?
It is, I believe, the 20th of October. That's a Saturday.
It is. Is it anything else?
It is exactly a year ago since we started our Instagram account, apparently.
Is it?
It actually is. I got a notification about that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow. It was something else a year ago as well.
Yes, it would have been the 20th of October a year ago as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
okay.
What were you getting at?
Well, come on then, birthday boy. Are we going to talk about the episode?
Oh, birthday? What's that? Oh yeah, it's my birthday, isn't it? Yeah, this has been recorded on my birthday because when we get older, unfortunately, birthdays are just another day.
Yeah.
And
thankfully, viewer, he's not recording it in his birthday suit.
Well, you only can see my T-shirt, so you don't know.
Well, no, but if you're wearing that much, you're not actually in your birthday suit, are you?
Would that be if you just wear a T-shirt? I suppose that's just being rude, isn't it? Really?
It is basically.
Okay. Right. Let us talk about the episode.
Yes.
Okay,
Tim, or alternate.
The alternate.
The alternate.
The alternate. Yeah. Tim, what did you think?
Well, it was a hell of a lot better than the last 3 weeks. That's for sure. It's
Yes.
yeah, on the whole, a very positive experience, enjoyable episode with some interesting concepts, interesting kind of plot twists and stuff as well, which was really good to see. It is good to have another episode that focuses so much on Odo.
Yes.
When Dr. Mora first appeared, I thought he looks a bit like Odo, or it looks a bit like Odo is trying to look. That was, and when you said later when we were watching it that I thought that's okay.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Clocked that, so that was well done. And I did, because I'm suspicious about these things. When he first appeared and was quite enthusiastic about Odo and his new sort of position and stuff. I was wondering what the catch was going to be, and if there was going to be something where he needed Odo for some kind of nefarious personal
there's definitely
endeavor.
I think in the early part of this episode, when you first meet him and you're listening to the way he's talking and Odo's reaction to him, which is not very positive, you get a sense of intentionally, almost certainly, a impression that there was some kind of abusive relationship there in the past. I think that's kind of what they were suggesting, which, I think you watch, you think, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with the way these two are with each other, and obviously on Odo's side, because clearly he's our hero. But yeah, anyway, so yep.
Yeah. So so just there's a lot going on, but a lot was positive. There was a slightly curious moment with Bashir, where he was just talking to himself. I suppose it's one of those things that you think, do people really do that? And then you walk around the house and you find that you do actually talk to yourself as well. It's just
in such a coherent way, though, because that was very much in a dialogue.
It was
so in a dialogue, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
One day she likes this. One day I'll stop chasing him, and then we'll see. It's like I watched. I thought, who does that? I mean, really, if you're talking to, like, say we were in the same room together now, and you just popped out to the toilet or whatever, am I going to stand there going, I wonder if he thought, who said? Do you? I mean,
you
it's
don't
all in
think
there.
in kind of, you don't really think in cliches like that. Or you don't talk out loud in cliches like that. So I think possibly that might have been better off as an inner monologue, or just
the acting.
Maybe try to sell it with his face.
Yeah, it was definitely
without the lines.
I mean, I think there was enough prior to him actually saying that between him and Dax in the scene that you could see you got the subtext.
Yeah,
she kind of likes not the chase as such, but she kind of likes teasing him.
Exactly,
and
she knows she's got
kind of enjoying
power over him. Yeah,
and he's kind of enjoying that. They've obviously moved beyond that weird creepiness from his first season.
I know him hiding her clothes was a bit to stop her from getting out of sick bay.
When that happened, I was like, yeah. Of course, that's why. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Oh dear, never mind. But
I reckon I'm pretty sure he never did that. I feel sure that was just Dax just teasing again. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think in this one, all the regulars get a decent chunk of the pie.
Cisco's not in it an awful lot, but his,
when he is in it, he's important.
He's right. He's on the nose completely.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose same really for Dax and Kira. Actually, O'Brien was tolerable in this episode as well. So
it's interesting to me that, as I said last week, I don't disagree how little interest you have in O'Brien, whereas in the early beginning of the series, it seemed that Bashir was going to be your character, but you're kind of warming to him now as they're slowly getting the sense of who he is. Whereas O'Brien, the more we get to know him, the more you're like, oh, he just annoys me.
He did amuse me a little bit with all of that stuff when he said about if he was saying about if well, my wife's going to kill me for doing this and that kind of, and with stuff like that you start to get a sense of him as more of a proper person with that kind of sort of proper self-deprecating attitude towards aspects of his life and stuff as well. So just because he doesn't normally refer to being married unless someone asks him, says, "How's Keiko?" And he'll say,
and usually
"I'm
it's
sure
all
she's fine.
very...
She's visiting her 100-year-old mother somewhere." So it's just so for him to actually bring it up, it's endearing in that way, because you think, actually, yes, no, he is.
And he brings it up in a very natural way as well.
Yeah.
It's not like the usual put upon, she's there somewhere. But it just felt, like you said, real. It felt like a sort of thing that people, like how spouses say, or anybody in relationships say, they're like, oh, don't want to find out about this. To find out, pop to the pub, that kind of... Yeah.
And
I like
that
too.
That was probably the biggest thing about this episode over the last few weeks, is that people were speaking dialogue that that felt genuine and natural and meant something. So you got that the other one instance where Dax said to Bashir, "Do you want a Raxagino before bed," or whatever it was.
Your replicator or mine?
Promenade. That was, you see, that was fine, but the last week it might have been. Do you want? Well, yeah. Do you want like a
Would you like a Klingon coffee?
Like a Cardassian ribeye steak before, or or
a Klingon Raxagino,
a Gamma Quadrant Cherryade or something like that. You think, no, stop putting stupid things on. Just actually should be a Gamma Quadrant gammon steak, really, but just
a gammon
steak. Rectagino is something that we know. It doesn't have to be quantified by.
I think it was quantified in the early days when they mentioned it's basically Klingon coffee.
Klingon coffee, yeah.
Which is terrible. But since then, we don't need to now because we know what it is, and it's just we know it's a drink. That's all you need to know.
So we didn't have any of that bollocks going on this week. So it was, people were saying words that felt like they were coming naturally to them, naturally from the from the situation, and that was good. As I suppose, if you're being uber critical, you've got there's obviously some limit. I would imagine budgetary limit to what they could do in terms of visual effects. Mm-hmm. So you've got the what was happening to Odo towards the end, which looks very kind of
the CG generated. When he's trapped in the force field is
exactly like, when they're down on the planet, because it's only a set that's needed for a very brief time. It's that, and it looks like a Star Trek set, because it doesn't actually look that much different to how old sets looked years ago. You've got some stone bits, you've got some flats, you've got a painted backdrop in the background. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter an awful lot. And they crafted the drama, and it was directed in a way that you didn't need to see the monster. You do have there is the slight disjoin between the tentacle that comes and grabs Bashir around the neck, which doesn't have the same kind of sort of organic glistening feel to the bits of the computer generated blob that you see. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And in that respect, actually, it was directed rather reminiscently of Alien.
See, I was thinking this too, like in particular the whole bit where they're trying to trap the force field and the promenade's dark. And just all I did think watching that, I was like, this is really well directed. I mean, the lighting, the shadows, the position of the cameras, everything. Like, this is actually really good.
Yeah.
And curiously enough, this is done by David Carson, who only the year after this, actually the same year technically, '94, would go on to direct the first TNG film. The
Oh,
only
he
TV
directed
director.
Generations, did he?
Yeah, he's the only TV director outside of Jonathan Frakes to go on to direct a Star Trek film.
Ah,
Which
right.
I'm watching this one, I'm like, I can see why, because he's clearly got a good cinematic eye.
Yes.
Whereas other directors would have really cocked this up. But yeah, he
Yeah.
really got it. It's got the normal domestic side of things really well lit and all that. Then when time for the horror of it to come out, he knew, let's play with shadows here, because that stirs up something in people.
Yeah, play to the strengths rather than show your hand and highlight the limitations
Yeah.
of what you've got. So yeah, so
So
no,
what
I
did you
like
think
that
of
as well.
the actual story, which of course the story being Odo and Dr. Moro, because that's father-son that's kind of the undercurrent, I think, of this
Yeah,
story. I think
yeah.
is done very well.
I liked it. I thought it was done well as well. And as the episode progressed, I warmed to Doctor
Yeah, because
Mora
at the
a
beginning you're like, oh, I
lot
don't know
more.
about
I
this
thought,
guy.
don't trust this guy. um, but I don't know the actor. You said he appeared as a Klingon in.
James Sloyan,
Okay,
he, prior to this, hang on, no, let's get the timeline right. I think this is his first Star Trek role.
okay. He was very good,
Um, he is very good.
very charismatic, very watchable.
His voice is just, it's that gruff, gravelly tone to his voice. It's, I don't know, it's just something about him. It's
Mm.
like, wow, he's got good presence. I think that's what it is.
Yes,
He does come back, as the end of this episode suggests, obviously Mora will appear.
Mora
But he
Mora.
returns, Dr. Mora, yep. He returns later this year as in terms of Star Trek in Next Gen, which is actually an episode in which Quark appears. And he appears, I guess, the following year in season 1 of Voyager briefly as another character.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because his voice is quite distinctive, he is also one of these actors who, when he appears, you're like, oh, it's him. He
Yeah.
appeared in, what was it? I was watching some old horror. I think it might be one of the House series, actually. Possibly. I can't remember now. And before I even saw his, I think I've seen his name on screen. I can't remember, but as soon as he appeared, even though he's out of all his makeup, and he looks, obviously, more his Dr. Moore role is more physically him than anything else he does, because all he's got is a bit of a nose and a wig, so he looked more or less himself. But as soon as he spoke in whatever this, I'm pretty sure it's one of the House films, I was like, wow, yeah, that's him. He's looking so young, though. But yeah, he's one of these actors I don't look out for, but if I see his name pop up, or if he just turns up in whatever, it's like, that's nice. There's
Yes.
just certain actors, Star Trek
He'll
actors in this
he'll be
case.
quality.
Yeah, you just know, this is in for a good turn regardless. It's like I'm pretty sure I said before, Michelle Forbes, who plays Ro Laren in Next Gen. Same as Nana Visitor as well, Kira. Whenever they appear in anything you're watching, straight away you're like, they're going to elevate this just by their presence. Like there's I was watching The Hunger Games. I think it's the last story, the 2-part film. I forget which one now. She turns up in it as some leader of the resistance or something. And as soon as I was watching, I was like, oh my God, is that Michelle Forbes? And I'm like, this is immediately the best of the series. Just because she's in it for maybe an hour of it, but still, straight away, it's the best of the series because she has elevated the entire thing because she is just so damn good.
Cool.
But yeah, I think James Lyon is definitely one of those actors. He's a good actor, really good, perfect for this role. He plays initially the undercurrent of he believes he was always doing the right thing for Odo.
Yes.
And he could never see, as he explains later, never understood why Odo went. Never got the fact that as a scientist, he's trying to study this new life, and he believes he's teaching Odo these wonderful things, which, in hindsight, he probably did. Maybe not in the best way, but he certainly taught Odo a lot about humanity and interaction and social skills and all these things. But I get the impression, certainly from what Odo said in the past, from Odo's point of view, it wasn't by any means his best experience ever. But yeah, so I like that undercurrent, and I like the way Sloyan plays Dr. Moore in that you can see he's got this pride about himself, like, oh, I did brilliantly. Look what I've done. But then when he starts to see the truth of who Odo is now and how much it's kind of negatively affected him too, he's humble enough to realize. I mean, before he actually admits it in the performance, you can see a change in him gradually as he began to realize it before he's even saying he's realized it. And yeah, I like that. And Rene Aubergenois playing Odo, I think he plays the opposite of that really, really well, where you finally get to peel a bit of Odo back because, like Dax says, he keeps himself to himself. And obviously we've seen more of him than most of the characters on the show have seen of him, obviously. But we still know so little of him. Bizarrely, I think we get to see the most honest side of him when he's with Quark, generally.
I think you're probably right, but I think this episode gave Rene the kind of the widest scope to showcase his acting abilities that the show's done so far.
I think so. He did wonderful. Although you were talking about how the special effects and the CG wasn't wonderful. I like the practical makeup they put on the Odo mask, or maybe they created a different mask, possibly.
The dripping one.
Lose control. So I was watching it, as I said to you at the time. And as soon as you looked up, you could see the face starting to melt away and whatever. I switched windows to the video of us just to see your reaction. And viewer, because obviously you're listening, you're not going to see this, but if you're the viewers of this, he's just like
it was really well done.
Do I get a sense that you don't watch a lot of horror?
The horrors that I tend to watch, my wife watches a lot more sort of like contemporary horror. I don't watch a lot of kind of newer horror. I prefer the old, slightly camp Hammer horrors and Amicus portmanteau horrors and stuff. We've got a lot of those films. But I love the the sheer kind of camp world in which they exist. That kind of heightened sort of theatrical gothic.
I'll tell you what I nearly watched, which is sort of connected to what you're saying here and what you said last week, actually. Lair of the White Worm, because that's on Amazon.
Is it? I haven't watched it for years. It was
you may recall I said I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Like, really? And it keeps appearing on because I'm going through the horrors looking for some because I'm Halloween, and that came up. I was like, I don't know. I think I've heard from somebody it's really shit, so I don't know.
It is. I think I'm pretty certain it is. It was. I think it was made in like the early '90s, and it was one of those films that when it came out, it just quite a few people I knew had watched it. It's just because there's some like token nudity and stuff in it. So when you're kind of mid to late teens or whatever, it's or back then anyway, it was potentially
I'm sure
the best we could get. So it's just.
Because nowadays they just go on the internet and get whatever.
It's all over the internet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So. But I don't remember it being a particularly good film.
I think I'll watch it maybe when's Halloween 31st. That's Tuesday, my last day off. I might watch it then just for fun, shits and giggles. And then next week I can say, well, I did watch it, and you were right.
A trick or a treat.
Yeah. It may have aged well. Yeah, what was I going to say? Oh. Back to this episode, sorry.
Yes.
It was connected to your older horrors. Two things I noted this episode 2 continuity points that were raised.
Oh, yeah.
One, of course, I mentioned during the actual recording, because we discussed this in an earlier episode. I think we was talking in the Necessary Evil that even though at that point in the past, Terracnor, as it was then, was in orbit of Bajor, now it's moved a little bit further away. How
5
long
hours.
it must take to get to the station anyway. And now it's 5 hours by all accounts. So I'm assuming, at the very least, when it's in orbit, it still took a couple of hours to get there. Because that to me, that still makes no sense of why would it be a orbital mining or processing unit when it's like 2 hours travel to get from whatever you've taken from the ground to be processed in space 2 hours. It's just, I don't get it.
No.
I mean, when they obviously decided that, I don't know if that was ever the beginning of the series. We knew it's a space station that the Kardashians run when they were raping the planet. But I don't know if it was until Necessary Evil that the writers decided it was more than just a space station.
Yeah.
Either way, still, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't all add up to me.
No.
But anyway, that was obviously a Necessary Evil. But I like that we've now established it's 5 hours away. We have to listen out for that because I've got a feeling they might contradict that later.
Right.
Speaking of contradictions,
yes,
it wasn't the main other continuity point, but I'll mention it now. I did reference it briefly when we was watching. When Cisco's talking to Bashir about Dr. Mora and Odo's relationship, he mentioned about, they're talking about Dr. Mora's not well and how that must be affecting Odo, blah, blah, blah. And then he's accusing his own father as an analogy. And certainly the way discussion goes about his dad, saying his dad was very ill, but it wasn't until the end Cisco really realized how little he could do.
Yeah.
That to me is like,
so sad to know that his dad's dead.
Your dad's dead.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're saying here.
Basically what he's saying, yeah. It was very sad to hear that his dad's dead.
But as I did kind of spoil for you, that's not even true at all. But we'll find out that later. It's interesting to me watching early episodes, being more critical on purpose, seeing stuff you're like, is that just you forgot? Because it happens, different writers come and go, and they can't remember every single detail. Because back then, Memory Alpha and all these internet things weren't really a thing to actually. The fans nowadays, it's all stored everywhere, so there's no excuse when you're writing a script, Stephen Moffat, to have contradictory stuff to your own material because you can go online, it's all there. You don't have to do the work. Back then, you'd have to keep it all up in your head. So I don't know if it's they forgot or they just decided we'll ignore that because now we've got a new story to tell and we'll ignore that bit because it gets in the way of what we want to do. But the other continuity point they raised, because going back to the whole Odo was trying to emulate Mora's look. Remember I mentioned, I think it was when we did the podcast with Elliot, because he's on about the look of Odo. And I mentioned that the original intent was he was trying to emulate the human face, but couldn't do it very well.
Yes.
And basically, he does say that in this, where he mentions you still can't get the ears right.
Still can't get the ears, yes.
Or indeed the nose, as it turns out. But so that's confirmed here that this is a limitation of Odo.
And that's how I don't remember when, but I was told at some point in the past, or I picked up at some point in the past that was why he was like he was, because he was trying to look like a human, but he couldn't.
He does say he does mention in an earlier episode to Kira. There's an episode where Kira comes into the office and she's just doing a bit of pretense before she gets to the point. I forget what it is. It seemed like an earlier episode anyway. It might have been possibly the one when they had Marissa in the jail. I think it might have been that duet, I think. And he goes, just tell me what you've got to say, Major. Pretense to me is as hard to understand as it is for me to make a human nose. Or words to that effect.
Yes, I
So
remember.
more confirmation that, in fact, this is just a limitation of Odo's ability to shapeshift because he's still quite young as shapeshifters go. Another concept, which I think I did allude to when Elliot was here, is definitely not going to be something they're going to stick with. But it's interesting.
Yes.
I find it fun watching early episodes of stuff where you can see later on they've changed their ideas, changed their mind about something, or forgotten, whichever. And yeah, I quite like it at this point. So let's bottom line this, Tim.
Bottom line, vast improvement on recent episodes. Not the series' finest moment, but certainly much better than average.
Nice. Okay, my bottom line would be it's a great building block episode. It's nice to get into Odo. It's nice to get a bit of background and more exploration of the stuff that's been hinted at. And I quite like that this kind of, by the end of the episode, brings us slightly softer side of Odo, which you very, very rarely see. The only time we really see it is with Kira, really, because that's the only genuine friend he has. And even that, as we know, was not built on a great foundation. But that's Odo in a nutshell. Unfortunately, he's not built on a great foundation. And that is a wonderful, wonderful irony and a continuity pun that will make sense to you when we get to season 3.
Lovely.
Anyway, so yeah, good episode.
So, what have we got next week, Andy?
We have got next week Armageddon Game.
Right. Gosh. What could that be about?
Game that produces Armageddon?
Well,
the opposite game of life?
It's the sort of thing you'd expect it to do what it says on the tin, really.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, some kind of war or battle.
Well, I will tell you this much, which I did hint to last week, but you may have forgotten because you've had a busy week of being back in work.
Yeah.
It is, for better or worse, a O'Brien and Bashir episode.
Oh, that one. Okay, all right.
And the last.
Oh well, I'll look forward to that then.
The last we had of those, I believe, was The Storyteller.
Yeah.
With the Dow Rock and all that stuff. But these characters are a bit more established now, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, then. I think that's us done for one more week. Thank you, viewers. Assuming we have plenty more than one. I know Tim's not convinced, but I'm pretty sure we have more than one. And indeed, listener, thank you for enjoying us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, or thank you for enjoying us.
Yes. Glad to have you here. Glad to have enjoyed you in return.
What you do in the comfort of your own home, of course, is your own affair.
It is, and thankfully we cannot see or hear these things, so where ignorance is occasionally bliss. So, goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from him.
Yes, see you next week.
Bye-bye, Duggan.
Who the fuck is Duggan?